Welcome to this presentation. We are presenting today Tennis Commander. This is an app that we developed with the main intent to support tennis players in monitoring their performances, so helping them to improve. And this is a tool that we had in mind, this tool with the goal to try to bring to also non-professional people tools that are usually can be found only in professional tournaments, so in ATP tournaments or stuff like that. So this is our goal, and we are trying to do this in, let's say, in a cheap, in a not expensive. Cheap is not a nice word. In a not expensive way for the user. So our problem is that tennis, like any other sports today, is basically made out of numbers. So today, the main concern of all people involved in sport is that of analyzing numbers. So in fact, there is a huge stream of research on big data and sport. So big data, okay, is a quite common word nowadays, and sport. So how to process in an informative way numbers that come out from sports. And this is done in any kind of sports, soccer, baseball, football, volleyball, basketball, and so on. And clearly is done in tennis as well. One of the means that used to today to get all these numbers is by using wearables. Wearables are objects that are becoming increasingly popular nowadays, and there are several kind of wearables that are making closer amateurs to pro worlds. So because basically these tools are used mainly in professional area, professional groups. So the main intent, the main purpose why a user might want to use this kind of wearables is basically highlighted there with these 5 goals in mind. So to maximize performance, to track a goal that I have in mind, to analyze and measure improvements, to increase motivations, because I see my improvements and the analysis of these improvements, and also, last but not least, to share socially in a social way what the goals that I've been reaching during my training. So going to tennis, coming to tennis. So as I said, tennis is one of these sports that is being analyzed, and here we have this kind of tree that we call the tennis skills ontology. It's a kind of tree that wants to analyze what are the 3 major components of tennis. 1, basic strokes. Clearly, you need to be able to stroke a ball. Okay, the ball comes to you, you need to get it and to send it on the other half of the court. Then, important is how you move on the court. So court movement is another major skill that you need to master. And finally, strategy. So strategy is also of paramount importance in tennis. So these are the 3 main components that we aimed at. And so just to go to what other people do in this area, we highlighted here, I don't know if you can see with double circles, what is done by us and also by our competitors. So basically, this is let's say, the easy part. Okay, so how to analyze the movements. So get the movement of the player, how the stroke is performed. What we aimed also at was to target these other 2 important skills in tennis, and we will show you how we did it. So this just to show you how we differentiate by our partners. So other products that maybe you might be aware of are dedicated sensors that you put either on the racket, so here, or like this, or that you wear as a bracelet on your wrist. So these are, or also the other one up there. So these are usually what you find on the market, dedicated hardware. Or the other alternative is to get cameras. So you fill the court with cameras, and also clearly you can get a lot of information using cameras. But clearly, while this solution is not so expensive, this is very expensive. So to equip a court with this kind of cameras, fixed cameras, is something like 15,000 euros, something like that. So, and also you need guys that help in keeping this camera work. What we did was to use a general purpose hardware, so a smartwatch. So far we developed our app for Android, Android Wear, so Android smartwatch, but in our plans clearly we have also to extend this to iOS, obviously, and to the iWatch. So use general purpose hardware, so basically you don't spend your money to get just a piece of hardware that you use just for tennis, but you can use for all other kind, or sports or other kind of activity in your everyday life. And basically the sensors, and we decided to use a general purpose hardware because here we already have all kind of sensors that are needed to recognize the stroke. That is the first of the three parts that I talked to you at the beginning. So accelerometer, gyroscope, linear acceleration. So the smartwatch somehow gives you a biometric signature, so gives you the like you are the way you are behaving while playing, and in the first way it just provides you number. But what we mean here, we do not provide just numbers, is that we take those numbers and try to transform that into information for the player. So to motivate the player and support him or her during the sport activity. Okay, now I call my other colleague. We are two developers that we contribute to development of the whole app, and also we have here a federal coach that is helping us in also giving a meaningful information from the tennis coach perspective to the tennis players. So, Alessandro.
Okay, thank you. I'm one of the technical developers, as Giuseppe put it. I'm also the bridge between the tennis world, because I'm a tennis player myself. I will be availing myself with the help of Gabriella, who's professional, our resident tennis professional, as Giuseppe said. And I'm going to start just where he left off. We have smartwatches this day, like this one I'm wearing, like the one that Gabriella is wearing on her dominant arm. I'm also wearing this on my right arm because that's what we need to keep track of the movements. These are filled with sensors. There's a lot of stuff in these devices, which is not much different from what's found on dedicated hardware that's specifically powerpoints to recognize strokes in tennis. When we move about, these sensors here read numbers. So can you please, Gabriella, show us a backhand swing? A backhand swing. Thank you very much. During that backhand, the watch would generate a series of numbers like that one. Okay. This incomprehensible gibberish is actually the readings of the sensors that measure the acceleration that happened to the wrist while she was performing that swing. Now, that doesn't look like the backhand. The backhand that Gabriella showed us was an elegant gesture, a very nice motion, and this is a lot of gibberish. We need to figure out that this is a backhand. That's the kind of task we're facing. But maybe what happens is that perhaps this set of data is very different from what a forehand looks like. So if it is very different indeed, then that's all we need. So could you please show us a forehand gesture? That would be a forehand swing. And if we look, what happens here is that this is more or less the data generated for a forehand swing. Now, I cannot make heads or tails of this. I cannot tell whether this is a backhand or a forehand just by looking at this data here. But what happens is that we are living in the age of big data, of artificial intelligence, and specifically of machine learning. Okay, the way we teach a system to recognize that picture A is a picture of a cat and picture B is a picture of a flower, is not by telling the system what a cat is or what a flower is. It is by providing him with a set of examples: cat, 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 flower, flower, flower. That's the way machine learning works. That's the way that cars are going to be driving themselves in the near future. That's the way that Google provides you with results or answers to your queries, or Siri does it on your smartphone, more or less. So all we needed to do was to collect a number of strokes, forehand strokes, backhand strokes, all kinds of strokes in tennis. There are several. We are mainly concerned with the main five: the two volleys from the left and right side, the two backline strokes, backhand and forehand, and serve and smash. So what we do is collect a lot of data, apply some of these machine learning magic, so to speak, to try and figure out which stroke is being performed. Of course, we are not, in principle, limited to the basic 5 strokes. We could learn other motions, such as this kind of funny stroke here that these players trying to exhibit during an exhibition match. This is all possible because if we collect enough data, eventually machines are going to be able to tell apart the different kind of strokes. How did we do that? Well, it was actually surprisingly simple, because what we did was we enlisted the help of somebody who produced you know, those automatic machines, the fireballs that you can train with a drill. And we told people, look, I have this machine, do you want to try it out while wearing this watch? Nobody said no, so we collected more than 100 players to help us with that. And players of all kind of sizes, genders, left-handed, right-handed, and professionals, semi-professionals, amateur, people who didn't even know what tennis was. These were all useful information for us. We found out that we not only could we identify the kind of stroke they were playing back in the forehand, we could also detect a lot of other information, such as which grip they were using while they were performing the stroke. Because you can hold the racket in very different ways to produce different effects on the ball. So, for example, Gabriela, could you show us a forehand with an Eastern grip? Okay, that would be the swing with an Eastern grip. Could you show us the same with a semi-Western grip? Slightly different grip, and to our eyes, exactly the same kind of motion. It's not very easy for someone who's not as trained as she is to tell the difference between the two kind of swings. Of course, she can, because she's very good at it. We needed to make our machine be just as good. So what we did, we gave it a lot of examples of swings with different grips. And eventually we were able to detect at least spin and grip fairly accurately, so we can tell what grip was used during the stroke that was performed and which spin was imparted on the ball. These are very essential elements to know for a player, for an intermediate to advanced player. Other things that we haven't experimented with but are certainly possible are the direction that we give into the ball. Are we going cross court on the opposite side of the stroke, or are we going down the line? And the depth, is it a short ball, is it a long ball, closer to the baseline? Eventually what we achieved was a system that could reliably categorize the motion into the appropriate name for the stroke. We could try and demonstrate this live if Giuseppe can give us a hand. I don't know exactly what to do. I don't know what to do on her side. She's wearing a smartwatch, just like I'm wearing. Our app is running on this smartwatch. I just need to say that, okay, I'm going to start a playing session. That's all I need. And I'm going to...
Yeah, fortunately the monitor is not working wireless because the Wi-Fi connection. So
he will show.
Yeah. I just will be the...
If you stay there, you're going to be hit by the ball.
Okay.
Just in front.
Okay, so I'm going to throw balls at her, and she's gonna just try and hit me as hard as she can. Don't worry about me. These are rubber balls. They're not gonna hurt me. That's okay. That's one, two, backhand.
And now
Backhand.
wait. Okay, now the watch recognizes the forehand, and it transmitted here the fact that it's a forehand. So she can watch the result either on the watch or the coach or whatever on the phone.
So you basically have two apps. One
it's the same app, but it's
collects the
split.
information, and the other one just shows it.
Yeah, it's shown also there as well.
Yeah, it's the two versions. It's two versions of the same app.
Show there
Yeah,
and
after.
here.
Okay.
Yes.
Backhand. Good. Another one. Okay.
Okay, and
Last one.
backhand. Okay, backhand.
Okay. So what happened is that here in the don't worry about it. Here on the watch, she has a small recap of what happened. It should be exactly the same
Yes.
as he has.
Yeah.
It's a radar saying that she only played backhand and forehands, okay, because that's all she did. Clearly, We do not want, you do not want to overload the player with a lot of information like that on the wall. You want to provide the player with recaps.
Yes.
Yeah. Information around
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is subsets of information.
The
Here
two,
there is the
a smartwatch is always linked to a smartphone, so they can exchange information. What happens is that most of our logic, and that's perhaps the surprising thing, most of our logic, this categorization logic, works on the watch.
Yeah.
It's the watch that's saying, okay, I just performed a forehand, okay, and it sends that information to the smartphone. We'll see in a minute what we do with that information, but first, I want to show you something. We saw that he was using a smartphone. Smartphones have cameras, okay? Very useful. But we could use the camera and get the data stream from the camera as further information we can use to enrich the information. That's something that nobody else on the market, on this side of the market does. If you place a phone with just, let's say, a cheap tripod like this one, this is your typical run-of-the-mill Chinese €1 selfie-oriented tripod, okay, for a cell phone, you can just place it, and using the cell phone camera, video is captured. That video is analyzed in real time to identify the player on the field. Then a set of complex mathematical transformations are done to turn that image from a perspective real image to a 2D image, so we can know the position of the player in the court fairly reliably, okay, and in real time. If I skip ahead here in the video, we'll see that this works regardless of the camera position. In this case, the camera was placed behind the. Yeah.
Can I ask some, and you are taking these points only using one camera,
Yeah.
phone camera.
Yeah. Only one camera. Exactly. What we do is, when you place the camera, you essentially have to tell the system, okay, tell me where these points of the court are in the image. Okay, and that's all it needs to make the optical correction.
Mm-hmm.
It identifies, by using machine learning again, it identifies the what it think. Oops, sorry, I don't know how to go back. Okay, it identifies what it thinks the player is, and that's the same technology that's used by cars, by Google Car, for instance, to identify pedestrians. Okay, to know that somebody is a person, so you should not run into it. Okay. So if we can trust cars not to run into people, we can trust this thing to find out which people are or where people are on the court. Okay. So in this case, for example, this person is right here, and the system is telling me that this is his position. We can see here the last few positions plotted, not just the last one. Okay. That's a huge amount of information to process, but if you think about it, what we have now is position on the court. We have the type of strokes that have been played. We know fairly technical and deep details of these strokes, such as the grip that was used to perform the stroke is a very important element for the technique that's being used. The spin that was imparted to each of the stroke. We can collect this information over time, of course, so that what happened during the last set, what happened during the last 4 games you played. We can collect, after the session is over, the feeling of the player. This is a very important information for us. Did you have fun? Do you think you played a good game the last time? Okay, I'll tell you in a second why this is important. Additionally, we could also, many devices can do that. We can also collect biometric information such as the hard pulse rate. Okay. When you put these all together and you think that this is all done in real time, so I know exactly when a stroke happened in time, I can provide even more information, such as how close together were the shots, which is telling me something about the speed at which the game is being played. Okay. When I put all that together, I realize that we can actually have, oops, again, sorry, I'm just very clumsy today. We have what is essentially, okay, a coach, a potential coach. Okay, we have a lot of information that is useful to provide coaching to the user. Maybe not a coach that yells at you, because our main goal is to motivate the player. Okay, and we can do that because we are able to measure the progress that the player is doing. For example, we are able to tell that the player is accelerating the speed of its shots over time or using the grips more consistently. We can try and make the player recreate the conditions in which he felt he was playing a good game. And this is a very important thing. A typical thing that happens to all tennis players over the world is that sometimes they're happy about the way they're playing, and sometimes they're not, and they don't really understand why that is. Why they always get home when they're lost and they say, "I had a bad day." Okay, so what makes a bad day exactly? Maybe it wasn't a bad day at all. Maybe the other player is doing something that it's actually stressing one of your weak points. Okay, and when you realize that, you actually realize that your weak point is actually an improvement opportunity for you. Okay, so maybe you didn't know that, but maybe when that type of opportunity presented itself, such as, I don't know, a slow ball in the middle of the field, every tennis player knows that that's supposedly an easy ball, and yet one tends to make a lot of mistakes on that kind of balls, partly because concentration gets low in that circumstance. So if I realize that that's my problem, I do not eventually boil it down to superstition or having a bad day, but I realize that I may need to improve and work on that specific condition of the game. We have developed these applications so that we could share and compare online not just our achievements, but also our playing profiles. What happens is that because the system collects information about you playing, not about any player essentially, it knows what type of player you are. And over time, it tends to figure out how often you get to the net, whether you tend to follow to the net your backhand more often than your forehand, for instance, or that you tend to follow to the net sliced backhands, perhaps, a very common type of approach. So by doing that, it is forming a model that's specific to the player, and it can tailor specific indications to that player to improve his performance. One of the things you can do is find sparring partners online, find people that are close to you in position and that have a playing profile that's complementary to yours. So, for instance, if you're an attacking player, perhaps you want to play against a defending player. Okay? The main idea is that we should try and improve the playing experience. The more the player gets out of the playing experience, the more likely it is that he will be returning and constantly improving. One of the things that of course, we can do once we analyze the video, we can also record the video. And because we know exactly at which time each stroke happened, we can annotate the video by saying in this part of the video, in this portion of the video, a forehand was played. Which means that you can run over the video and say, okay, show me all my forehands, or show me all my backhand volleys. This is very useful because, as Gabriela can confirm, video analysis is one of the key elements in modern tennis coaching. You analyze the video and to find recurring mistakes. Okay? Normally, you do that by playing 100 times the same shot, so that you have a lot of material to work on. But that is not a realistic condition because you do not play 100 times the same shot in a row. Perhaps you play a backhand only after you have played 10 forehands, and that makes a lot of difference. You can get strategic hints about the game so that, for instance, if the player sees that you're not going to the net as often as you normally do, not as one should normally do, but as you normally do, he can tell you, look, you're more defensive, you're not as aggressive as you usually are. And that doesn't give me a solution, of course, but it makes me aware of an issue with my current game. Okay, maybe I'm choosing to do that, but maybe I'm not, and I'm not realizing it. That's very common among tennis players. In general, the thing that we're trying to do is to make the player feel good about the way he plays. So trying to recreate the conditions in which the player feels good, and that is what we hope will make this system, this application, work beyond the novelty factor that's what we feel is a problem with the existing solutions on the market. You buy a piece of plastic that you attach to your racket, and you go to play. You go to play an hour of tennis. You get back and you see all the statistics of your game, and you think it's very cool. The second time you do that, you kind of feel ridiculous having a bit of plastic attached to your racket, and you realize that knowing that you played 30 forehands and 20 backhands is not all that useful by itself. Okay, you need something more than that. So that's why we are making the effort to provide something more. If you're thinking that you might be ridiculous wearing a watch on your right wrist while you play, on your left wrist if you're left-handed, you are kind of correct. One of the things is that you can always, as is common with smartwatches, you can always detach the belt and put it into a wristband, for instance, one of those swag wristbands that is common use in tennis. Actually, this would probably be the preferred way of using this thing, because the lace, the watch lace, kind of impedes your movement in the wrist. So using a wristband would be the preferred way of using it. The resulting product looks a little bit like this. There's a bit that runs on the watch, like the one Gabriella is wearing, and there's a bit that runs on the cell phone. On the cell phone, you do get your typical dashboard that shows that during this particular session you ran for 405 meters, and the last shot you played was a backhand with top spin, and this is the distribution of the shots and the distribution of your grip, and that's the positioning on the court. One of the other important things is that you can get strategic support, as we said. Over the course of the game, you can get information about what happened, what's happening. So in this case, it is saying, look, the last rally was very long, so maybe you're out of breath. So relax a little before starting the next rally, the next point. This is all possible thanks to machine learning techniques. As I said, it is very important for us that the technology is one that adapts to the user as the user becomes more accustomed with the application, and vice versa, and as the application becomes more accustomed with the application. It should be non-invasive. We do not want to flash stuff at the user, of course. So the kind of things that you get on the watch is relatively discreet. We can do, imagine that there's a video of someone playing here. This is the video search interface, where you can see the video of the game being played, the video you have just recorded, and you can filter, using this button here, you can filter the video so that it only shows the kind of shots that you select. That's very useful for video analysis. It can save a lot of time for the video analysis. When you there's a social aspect, of course, where you can see head-to-heads with other users of the game, and you can say how you're feeling now, just for a bit of social. For a bit of social aspect. We've had the luck of, at least in the help of Nicolas Mahou, who is, I don't know if he's still or used to be. Anyway, he was ranked #1 in the world in doubles, tennis doubles. Okay, he's number 30 something in singles. So he's won several, at least the U.S. Open in double. I don't know if he has other accolades, but he helped us, and especially he was very adamant that we included the aspect of positioning, because positioning is pivotal in playing a good doubles game. Okay, position of one player with respect to the other is very important. So he thought that was a very good idea. Finally, and that's the last 5 minutes. You can see here some of the use cases. Well, I will skip at that actually and go to the next one. Do you have another one?
Yeah.
Okay, this is it. Okay. Here you can see the application being actually used, because we're not inventing stuff, by me and Gabriella. We're playing a mixed double here. I'm wearing the smartwatch, the autofocus, because the focus is on the watch. It's on the okay, it's over here. From when I perform the shot and when the shot appears here, but that's not important for us, because we do have the correct timing. Okay, So we just lay this plate on this markers. So that's what happens there. Eventually, from time to time, here a suggestion appears, such as you're playing a lot of services. Make sure you do not strain your back or something like that, or do not stay in the middle of the court. Either choose net or baseline. All right. So that's about it from our side.